That's good advice. And again, going back to what you talked about earlier, and this is just more on a personal level, is all about creating those relationships. And I guess on a business networking level, it's all about creating those relationships, right? And not being scared, because I think like coming out of college, you do kind of think of these big Goliath kind of huge mythical. Oh my gosh, it's the industry. It's like, especially with this new economy. And then I would also say not only building the relationships, but as independent filmmakers, you kind of feel as if that whole side of it is the industry, and they're gonna dilute your message, and they're gonna make it mainstream or what. I'm doing air quotes here, but uh, the mindset, at least for the independent filmmaker, it seems as if to have your idea and to keep it as pure as you can throughout the production, and then in post, that's when the money people come in and say, well, this is how we want to market it, right? But it's really healthy to hear that you do want to, during that developmental and pre-production stage, when you're writing the script, have the end goal in mind, right?
I mean, there's no great filmmaker that you and I would consider great who hasn't experienced the industry machine.
Right, and that's real, right?
It is real, and it's something that every filmmaker because here's the thing: without them, you don't really have a movie. No different than the camera is a technical piece of equipment. Inside of it, it's wires. It's very strategic. It's very organized, and you need the camera to shoot your movie. Well, it's no different than you need a distributor in order for your movie to actually go somewhere. So what's the point of even making a movie if you don't have that thinking in place? It is a necessary thing. Now, you may not always agree with where the buttons on the camera are located, but you deal with it. And it's the same thing with a distribution partner. I mean, they're wanting things a certain way, and it's not like you can't tell them what you think. I mean, it depends on your relationship, but I would really submit that you're going to find that I think a lot of distributors are also willing to collaborate. And these are people that they understand the market better than anybody. They
Yeah.
understand the market better than the filmmakers do. And it's important to, I think, give them that level of respect because at the end of the day, they have to go physically out and sell these movies. Now, there are bad distributors. There are people that are predators that just like to take movies and do nothing with them. But you have to do your homework. You have to research. I always think of it, it's like kind of like dating. It's like online dating. You just got to take your time. Don't rush into anything.
Yeah.
Just know what you want to accomplish out of it and go for there. And find companies that match you. If you've got a little movie that costs 10 grand that has no name actors, don't go banging on Lionsgate's door and say, hey, take a look. You're not going to be interested because it costs them too much money to do anything with that.
Right.
And it's not going to yield any more money in the marketplace. And that's another note to remember is that, the idea of this movie can go out and make millions. I'd say for any independent filmmaker out there listening to this would be to try to keep the cost of your productions low.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you don't have to pay for them. Hopefully, you can find people that are seasoned investors to help you finance those things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, keep your costs low because the market can only bear a certain amount because there's so many movies that are being put out into the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. And again, you're great at segue. You must have known my questions ahead of time. You got these sixth
I,
sense here, because I was just going to ask, not only if you're making a film, or in my case, I make more kind of web content, TV, multi-camera stuff, but web content for that matter. Um, the crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo thing is huge. Versus the traditional broadcasting sort of TV model is advertising during commercial breaks, or what's popular now is kind of more branded content that's inside of the show, if you will. But how do you see those kind of models versus venture capital, or as you would say, as you mentioned, seasoned investors? What would you advise, or maybe kind of sprinkling it, towing the line to kind of mix all three? But what would your again to up and coming filmmakers, what would your advice be for that kind of funding?
Well, if you're going to do a Kickstarter and an Indiegogo, fund crowdfunding campaign, it's important to note that most of the success stories that you hear within the realm of financing online like that, uh, it's really about your social media. It's about getting out there and creating buzz around the product that you're trying to I don't really think it's so much about the perks. I think it's more about just the overall message. You find that documentaries may have a better success rate because they're a social issue, and you can tap into a certain social message. Whereas like a classic narrative may be more challenging. You may have to rely more on your rich uncle, and his buddies to help you finance that thing. But
Yeah.
that's the realm of it. In terms of finding, the other thing to note too is that a lot of distribution companies, they have people that they go to for financing on certain things. And if you can present to them a good concept that's viable for their slate, they can make those connections for you.
Yeah.
Film funders, they don't advertise themselves. These are secret
Absolutely
people,
not. Absolutely not.
but they're also used to taking high risk in the marketplace because but they take very calculated risk. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, they're just so passionate about the story. No, they want to know that they're at the very least going to get this amount of money back, and for whatever reason, if they don't make it back, then they can at least use some of it as a write-off. But at the end of the day, these are very, very experienced film investors. But I would say this, a word of caution is that, always check with a lawyer if you're going to go out and approach people for funding. Check with a lawyer, check with the laws, because there are SEO laws that require you to file certain paperwork.
Okay.
And also, think about it this way: you got to let people know filmmaking is an extremely risky investment. I mean, it's probably one of the most insane things a smart investor could do in terms of actually putting money into something, because it's a crapshoot. I mean,
Absolutely.
you may have something that works today, but something could happen and change the whole scheme of things. So nobody knows there's nobody who has any clue what really works or what really doesn't work or whatever. We can only try to minimize and mitigate the risk as much as possible. But it's important for you to let people know those things. Don't come in there and be like, oh, this movie's going to make tons of money and you're going to get 10% back and it's going to be fabulous and blah, 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 because you're lying. I mean, you really are lying.
Cue the flashing disclaimer at the bottom of the screen. Warning, you must be crazy to start this industry. But yeah, no, that's good. And so it almost sounds like, in a way, the distributors, if you build the right relationship and you find the right distributor that fits the content you're creating, they're almost like an agent in a way. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean,
And there's
I've
nothing
never had an agent, but
No,
right.
there's nothing wrong with that, and you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. I mean, there are, first off, there are more distributors now than there have ever been, because
Wow.
distribution companies are the title, the phrase distribution companies is kind of loosely used now, because it's really about foreign sales agents. It's pretty much like one or two man people, or whatever, a small team of sales agents that go to each of these markets. These markets are like, big trade shows for films, and they have very particular meetings that they have certain buyers that are buying the same content over and over for them, and they've established really good relationships with those buyers. But those buyers are looking for X, Y, and Z. This is what they're looking for. And if you can create a good relationship with the distributor, then what it does is it allows them to get in on the ground level. And you'll find that a lot of these salespeople, they want to do something creative. They
Yeah.
want to have some influence in the creative process. And if you can give them that opportunity, I think it's a good step. And so take your time. So if you're coming out of film school, start with a distribution angle. Learn as much as you can about the market, learn as much as you can about the types of movies you're wanting to make, and try to find distributors that you can start building relationships with.
Wow. That's
And don't
great.
even think
Yeah.
about where the camera goes. I mean, that stuff
Yeah.
you'll figure out later. I mean, really, you can read a book about that. I mean,
Right.
make no mistake, making a movie requires a lot of skill, a lot of learning, and a lot of patience. And it's a technique and skill that comes into doing good movies. But at the end of the day, all of that is completely irrelevant if you don't think about that business side of it. I mean, it's just, you know, that's my 2 cents.